Announcements in addition to those that Pastor Randy gave before we broke for lunch. A reminder with your cell phones or electronic devices, if you could please put those in silent mode so that you maybe will still get your calls, but we don't hear those beeping and ringing throughout the plenary session. And if you do have to take a call, if you would please just step out of the plenary session room so that it does not, you are able to answer your call or take care of your business in peace and it doesn't disrupt the rest of what we're doing in our group. The Synod Assembly office is located right outside in the gathering space in the information center. It's kind of a half circle thing that's just right out these doors. And so if there's any questions that you have that would be related to Synod Assembly business or things that the people from the Synod staff could assist you with, that's where you would be able to find them, is at the temporary Synod office just at the information session. There are no paper tickets for meal tickets for any of the meals during the assembly. Your lanyard is your meal ticket. And so if people were wondering about meal tickets, there are none. Just your name badge and your lanyard are your meal ticket. A reminder, we will be going through just a little bit later that a lot of our business where we're voting will be done with our voting devices. And these are not yours to keep or to take home, or I guess you could, but if you do that, there will be a $40 charge. And they probably won't do anything for you besides having a little souvenir of the assembly. So reminder, this will come tomorrow again, but at the end of the assembly, we ask that you return your voting devices. And if you don't, even if you didn't know it, there's a number on your device, and the number is attached to your name, and the people in the Synod office know where you live. So they can find you, and they will get their $40 for the devices. And then just to reiterate what Pastor Randy had mentioned earlier today, that the caring office is located just outside the gathering space here and just to the right of Our Savior's office space. And there are parish nurses there, and also there will be massages that will be there, first come, first serve. And so those massages, if you're interested in that, out there in the caring ministry office. And then one final reminder that the blood mobile will be here just until shortly after 1 o'clock today. Thank you.
Thank you. We need to have a credentials report. If I could have Trey Dom, please come forward. There you are, Pastor.
As of 12:30 today, there are 127 clergy voting members. There are 181 lay female voting members, 138 lay male voting members, bringing a total of 319 total lay voting members. Total voting members of clergy and lay then would be 446. Of that, 16 are youth, 3 are people of color or non-English speaking persons. The total visitors and advisory participants are 54, bringing the total attendance to 500. Thank you.
Before we start practicing, can I have a moment of personal privilege? Would that be okay? Thank you. We have in our midst, he could not be here this morning, but he can be here for part of the afternoon, so I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce Reed Christofferson, and he serves as our lay voting member. Oh, stand up longer than that. Come on, stand up, turn around. He serves on church council, and we have the privilege, I'm the liaison bishop for Region 3, so I have the delight of working with Kayla and with Reed. Reed and I have known each other for a long time. He just finished up 30, how many years? 39 years in the military and just retired. So it was good that we put you to work right away in the church. I like that. Long service in the military, boom, right away. Okay, if you would pull out your voting devices. We are going to practice. Push one of the buttons. And how do you get them turned on? They're on? Mine's not on. Oh, yes, it is. Never mind. First of all, you got to teach the bishop how to use them. All right. When I tell you to vote, I will say voting is open. You will, if you have really good eyesight, you can look up in the very top, right next to the little green square. You can see how many votes are coming in. Like right now. Some of you are voting and you're not supposed to be. You are all going to have to sit here for the rest of the day. All right. How many Synod assemblies have you attended? This is my first. B is 1 to 3. C is 3 to 5. D is more than 5. Please vote now. All right, voting is closed. Would you please display the results? All right. Well, this is an experience. Wow, look at that, though. 23%. This is your first time. Great. 72 people. Put your hands up. Well, thanks for coming. Question number 2. What's your favorite part about being Lutheran? A, the coffee. B, potlucks. Singing in 4-part harmony. Sinning boldly. Please vote now. Is there all the above? Yeah. All right. Let's close the vote and see which one we like the most. Boom, yeah. Oh, should I tell this joke? No. You know what you get when you cross a Lutheran and a Jehovah's Witness? They come to your door and they invite you to a potluck. All right, what's the next question? How many conferences are there in the South Dakota Synod? 3, 5, 7, or 9? Please vote now. We'll see how well you know this place. Well, come on. Are some of you having to think about it, or you started up task forces out there right now to, please, let's just close the vote. Oh, very good. Some of you need to see me, however, you think there's 3. All right. No, there are 7 conferences in South Dakota Synod. Next question. I am a rostered leader, B, lay voting member, C, youth voting member. Would you please vote now? Boy, you didn't have to think about that one, I'm telling you. All right, let's close voting and display the results. Very good. Now, you do all know that every congregation in South Dakota gets an extra vote with a youth vote. So every church in this synod, no matter your size, gets at least 2 lay voters, 1 man, 1 woman, and then your pastor. But every church in this synod could bring a youth representative. And it would be really nice to have a whole bunch of those young people with us next year. All right. I am a member of Prairie Coteau, Madera, Crossroads, Southeastern, Northern Plains, Prairie Rivers, or Bear Butte. Please vote now. And if you don't know, ask someone sitting next to you, or cheat and look at the signs and just go with that. Please close the voting and display the results. Wow. Crossroads is dense. isn't it? I think, nope, didn't say that. All right. At this time, now we start voting for real. We need to adopt the rules as they are printed. We do not need to amend them. If you want to amend them, you need to move to the microphone. Tell us how you want to amend it, and then it will be a two-part process. It takes a simple majority to approve an amendment, but then it takes a 2/3 to approve it as a part of the rules. I don't see anyone moving to the microphones. I would entertain a motion to approve the rules as they are printed. Is there a second? Is there anyone speaking? Well, let's just do a voice vote, or do you want to vote by show of hands? Let's do that. All those in favor of approving the rules, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, raise your left hand. They are approved. All of you that were confused about which hand you have, no. All right. Let us move then to approve the adoption of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve it as printed. Is there a second? Second. All right. Is there any desire on your part to make amendments to the agenda? Seeing no one moving, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It is approved. All right. Well, now you get to listen to me for a couple of minutes. As soon as we get my slideshow up, most of these comments are going to be over and against or over and above what is in my written report. Certainly you can read that. But there's some of it's an expanded piece. But in any case, I wanted to have some time with you as we gathered together. As I told you in the sermon this last Saturday, I was in Hendricks, Minnesota at Christ Lutheran for an ordination of a young man. I got to meet his family, his child, his wife and child. And as I was exploring, I discovered that Christ Lutheran is the merged church between First Lutheran, which was a country congregation that burned down, and Marble Lutheran, which is also out on the prairie. Well, what I knew, of course, was that my father had been the pastor at Marble Lutheran from 1958 to 1961. So as I'm poking around, here are all these pictures. So this is not a great picture, but that is my dad in 1958. And the reason that you're seeing my dad is I wanted to say thank you, not just to him, but to all the people that have made the church what it is today. I wanted to start this report by saying thanks to our elders and for the gift that they were to me, both as a child and as I grew up. I give thanks regularly for the leadership that I have experienced, both back in the old days. And if you're playing the drinking game, I'm actually going to say the American Lutheran Church. So for those of you that are keeping score, that'll probably be the only one. But in the old church, the American Lutheran Church, I was gifted by the leadership that we had throughout this state as I came to serve here in the South Dakota district of the American Lutheran Church. And then as I moved with you into the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. So my dad's sort of representative of all those folks that were a part of my life and a part of your life as we were church as children and as we came into our adulthood. I really do want you to hear the thanks that I have for the leadership that we had from both lay people and pastors. So I want you to hear that. We live in a beautiful state. I live here for a couple of reasons, but one is I think it's one of the prettiest places in the world. Sometimes you have to look kind of careful to see the beauty, but nonetheless, when you're a pilot, sometimes you get a bird's eye view that is just breathtaking. So this is a picture from earlier this spring. I'd had work out in the western part of the state and was coming back early. I had about an 8:30 meeting, so the sun was just coming up. This is about 12, 15 miles west of Sioux Falls, getting ready to land at the Sioux Falls Airport, and it was just a gift. And I get to see that regularly as I travel the state. Most of the time by vehicle, but every now and then a little bit faster. And what I like about this way is you never get a ticket. Not that I get tickets, but you just don't get tickets in an airplane. And I really very much appreciate the opportunity because of gifts that come to the Synod to be able to use that mode of transportation. For me, the highlight in my own personal life of this past year was the churchwide assembly. You were incredibly well served by the folks that went to Pittsburgh from the South Dakota Synod. We had done some pre-planning, and we were able to have a suite, which we paid for, and we got that because of some folks at Churchwide that did a wonderful job of negotiating on our behalf. And so we were able to meet as a whole group, all about 28 of us, 29 of us, every day to kind of debrief, have conversation, to share a meal, and we would not have been able to do that if it hadn't been for Mary Beth. And I know for me, just personally, spending time with our delegation in that room was time well spent. It was a time of discernment for me, having been nominated on the first ballot for the office of presiding bishop. Long conversation with folks from South Dakota, longer conversation with my bride over the phone as we tried to make some decisions, made the decision to pull my name out, and to be a part then of that assembly in electing Bishop Eden to serve as the first woman of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America was just breathtaking. And then later on, having the opportunity to elect my friend to serve as the secretary of the church. The folks you're seeing here are some of our folks from South Dakota. That's what you're seeing there. And then we got Kayla elected, and we got Reed elected. If you ever want to hear Kayla's elevator speech, it is not good. I'll just say that. We had to work on that, but we finally got a good elevator speech for Kayla. And it was really fun to have her get elected. As a part of the assembly, they had a kind of like a habitat, except for bikes. They had bikes for folks, and they invited a bunch of bishops to ride them from a church down to the assembly. Unfortunately, the helmet that I finally got stuck with was a children's helmet. No more than you could get oh my gosh. And I knew if I put that picture up, my kids, who are always telling me to wear my helmet. So there's nothing quite like riding through the streets of Pittsburgh. Anyway, I want to say thanks to Pastor Vihar for driving a crew from South Dakota. I had a meeting, so I was already in Chicago for the installation of Bishop Eden. That is Bishop Eden and her husband Conrad, just moments before we're about to step in for worship. And you already know this young lady. It was a delight to walk into one of the rooms, and there's Bishop Victoria getting dressed and preparing for worship. So it was lovely to have you there. And this is as we are approaching the actual installation portion of the worship service. When I was in the Conference of Bishops meeting, we got to start to hear about the reports from Western South Dakota about the blizzard that was happening on the 1st of October. A good friend of mine was in Spearfish for a meeting, and he was sending me pictures of 4 to 6 foot drifts outside his door of the hotel that he was staying in. We are gifted in this state with that. The woman that you're seeing on the left-hand side of that photo, Her name is Lisa Adler. She normally works for Lutheran Social Service, headquartered out of Aberdeen. But when there is a disaster, when there's a declared disaster, she changes hats and becomes our Lutheran disaster response person. The way we normally have worked that is that I have some ability to release money within about, 12 hours, where I can instruct Lois to cut a check because they need funds right away to start to set up the office as they decide where they're going to move and where they're going to start to work. And so within one day, we had people on the ground doing work of recovery and working with families in need. So the gentleman on our left, on your left, is Pastor Mike Stady. He is the Director for Lutheran Disaster Response. The gentleman in the middle is Pastor Dana, and of course, Bishop Eaton. So in January, I invited Bishop Eaton to come out, and we spent a little time in Pierre at the Senior Pastors Retreat, and then with the governor, and she got to meet the House of Representatives. And then we traveled up to Bison, where we had an event, an evening meal. They had an opportunity to meet Bishop Eaton. There were more than 10 congregations there from North Dakota and western South Dakota. That evening, that night, we stayed with the Jorgensens out at their ranch. And if you've never been to that part of the country, you can actually find places where you can see no man-made or woman-made lights. And we had to drive a long ridge. I'd been out to the Jorgensen ranch. And Liz finally turned to me and she said, "There are people living out here, right?" No, this is the dark side of the moon, and we just... So I appreciate Pastor Dana and the folks up there at Bison and Buffalo and the congregations that were there and for the work that they've done in working recovery. This is one of the cows that died in the blizzard out at the Jorgensen Ranch. Almost all the deaths were young cows. This was a 3-year-old cow, and almost all of them were in that age range, which means that your future of your cattle herd has died. I think there was somewhere right around 90,000 animals that died in that blizzard. Work is still ongoing. I know that there was just a work project a couple of weeks back. If you have some interest, I know there are still recovery pieces that are ongoing. But for me, it was one of those events where I saw people that normally can't stand to be in the same state with each other. I'm not being funny right now. Working right alongside of each other. There were some very competing interests that put the competition aside and sat down and did some marvelous recovery work. And I just wanted to say thanks to all those that have been and are participating in that recovery process out in western South Dakota. We had not our first, but we kind of fired it back up again, Synod Youth Gathering here this past spring. There was 100 and how many? Suzanne? 150 young people that gathered at Joy Ranch, and we are intending to do that again on April 10 and 11 of 2015, and again at Joy Ranch. And it's on my calendar. I will be there. Looking forward to it. This is a pretty recent picture of Westside Lutheran. This is not our only, but one of our new mission starts. But we have had incredible support from neighboring congregations, Westside, or not Westside, but West Nidaros, Our Savior's Peace, both from the pastors that are serving in those locations, but also from lay people. And because of the support that we've had, we've kind of moved ahead a little bit sooner than we would have normally, and the building is going up. We hope to be able to dedicate that in the fall. They are in the call process right now of calling their first pastor. This was a congregation that was developed by 2 lay people, and we give thanks for their work in bringing this new community of faith together. And that's what we did last year, if you remember correctly. And there is Bishop Eaton standing back in January inside the building. We had our first Associate Pastors Retreat also this spring. They were working really hard here. The woman on your far right is Pastor Ruth Ann Lockery. I used to have the privilege of working with her out at Lutheran Memorial with Pastor Tom Opoyan. She now serves as associate pastor in Denver. And as we were putting all this together, I threw out, who would you like to have come? And the chorus was Pastor Ruth Ann, because a number of those pastors had her as their internship supervisor. Who knew in this small church? Well, in my sermon, you heard me talk about foster care. This is something kind of near and dear to my heart. I've been in conversation with Linda Dugard. She has an emphasis that she is rolling out that I said I would bring up with you, which is Foster One. In your packets that you received in your little bags, there is a flyer in there. What we're asking for is that you would invite your congregations to consider being a part of the foster care community, where there's a URL on there and some questionnaires that you have to fill out. Obviously, there's background checks. This does not happen overnight, but would invite you to share that with the folks that you have in your communities. Part of what happens is when we have a broad base of foster parents that are available, we are much more able to serve those children that can sometimes come from very complex situations. And so if you would be willing to lift that up, I know that it makes a huge difference in the lives of children in South Dakota. Here's our 2 companion synods. And do we have a World Cup update? Does anyone know? Ah, okay. That was not what we wanted to hear. But that doesn't mean they're out, right? No. Here is the new congregation that was finished up in the northern part of Nicaragua. Beautiful facility. Mike Busby has been serving as our missionary down there now for almost 3 years. And we are in the process of calling a new person to go down there and replace Mike. He has agreed to serve until we can get someone down there. We've had a number of congregations that have been part and parcel of the development at Cedro Galan. First Lutheran, particularly here in Sioux Falls, but a number of others. We've had folks that have made many trips down into Nicaragua and have been working on the project at Cedro Galan. See some bananas growing. And one of their big pieces that we support out of the South Dakota Synod is their annual youth camp. And I know that they're always looking for supporters of that particular ministry. And it's always fun to get to hear some of the backs and side stories. This next January, because of some relationships in Flandreau, the Augustana baseball team is going to be going down to Nicaragua for 2 weeks. And they get to do some of their own practice, but they will be doing work with the kids down there in Nicaragua. So if you would keep that baseball team in your prayers, that would be great. When I went to Cameroon right before Thanksgiving, traveled with 4 pastors. And you see one, Tricia Basie, Jess Dom, Pastor Tesh, and Pastor Nate. Not that I don't like Pastor Nate, but I did try to get a doctor, and we could not get a doctor. The end of the year is sort of like harvest season for physicians. So we went to the bullpen and we got Pastor Nate. Because, again, First Lutheran has done a leadership gift at the hospital in Garabalai. While we were there is when the violence really broke out in Central African Republic. So I had the most interesting Thanksgiving I have ever had in my life. Most of the pastors from CAR came across the border. Many of them had to flee because people were coming to kill them. They'd had to flee with their families. They were pretty shook up, to say the least. Many of them had their houses burnt down. And we spent time with them on Thanksgiving Day, listening to stories, and then we shared some Thanksgiving with them. They are not a big fan of pumpkin pie, I will tell you that. They all were very valiant in making an attempt, but you could tell that none of those CAR pastors were excited about pumpkin pie. So that didn't quite make it. Neither did cranberry relish, which some of our missionaries had brought back from the States. Not a big hit, but nonetheless, we had a delightful day with them as we sat and listened and prayed and were community. This was one set of ordinations that we were a part of. I got invited to preach at this worship service, and there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 people in the Millennial Church. It was a short worship service. It was quite a bit shorter than the installation of the bishop the week before. It was only 6 hours and 10 minutes instead of 6 hours and 20 minutes. I'm not joking. This is the Millennial Church as we're getting ready to install the new bishop, Bishop Ngozo. And this is not a good picture, and I apologize for that, but here we are about ready to do the installation. Last year, you voted to raise 25 roofs. As a part of our trip over there, we got to dedicate 2 of those. They ended up being on the same day. I almost died at the second one. These guys, thought it was really funny that I was falling asleep. But the reason I was falling asleep is they'd started up a generator, and the exhaust from the generator is coming into the front of the church. And I look over, and the presiding bishop and the regional bishop are both passed out. And I'm not feeling good. And I think I'm pretty sure I passed out. And I made my interpreter go out and get him to move it. And he came back and he said, they don't want to move it. I said, unless they want to kill everybody in the front, get it moved, which they did. So then you wake up from kind of all that. Your head hurts, and then I had to get up and preach, which, wow. But we got the roof dedicated. The other piece that we did was to help rededicate the hospital in Garibelli. It is the only hospital within about a 100-mile radius, and it sits right on the border with CAR. So while we were there, there were already people coming back over the border that had been wounded in gun battles. When our group from Mitchell and St. John's in rural Dimmock went, my son-in-law spent most of one day patching up bullet holes in individuals. But through gifts that came from South Dakota, from First Lutheran, we have completely remodeled that hospital. And then when we came home, once again, we had figured out that the electrical system just simply needed to be replaced. So we had a bid, we did some work, and I want to, again, say thank you to people at First Lutheran that have given some money, to East River Electric, which has also made a donation. But then if there are folks here from Trinity Lutheran in Mitchell and St. John's Lutheran in rural Dimmock, if you would stand up. Come on, there's got to be somebody. Yeah, right there. We needed $27,000, and we had been in conversation. We had raised about 10 from First Lutheran and East River Electric and whatnot. And I got a phone call from folks at Trinity, and they said, "Well, we're gonna raise 14,000." Really? They're not very big churches. Well, and they said, "You can go ahead and release the money because we promised you we're going to get that." They called me back 2 weeks later, and they said, "Well, we missed the mark a little bit. We only raised 17,000." So I just want to say thanks. So the work is being done. Actually, most of it is completed in rewiring and putting in stabilizers at the hospital. And there's the crew that went from South Dakota. And that's the X-ray machine that's finally going to work after 10 years of not working. Part of my trip was that I had the privilege of teaching at the seminary. I really liked doing that, and I got to teach with every class, from those that were just beginning seminary to those that are getting ready to graduate. And it was just a ball. I can't tell you, it was fun. At this assembly, we're going to invite you to vote on whether or not we're going to engage in a missional appeal in the South Dakota Synod. And I want to talk just a little bit about that. Excuse me. First and foremost, it is not about the budget. All of the money that we raised will not go to any part of the budget that I administer. It is all about the future of this church. When you elected me 6.5 years ago, we had done some math, and we knew that by the time that 12 years had gone by, that just north of 60% of our pastors would be retired, and that we needed to be very diligent about raising up leaders, and then also about inviting leaders. So over the 6.5 years that I've been serving, we lead the church in the number of first calls. I have ordained now 61 people. By the end of this year, I think it's going to be at 66 or 67. Most of those folks are still serving in South Dakota. I've grown to dislike grandparents quite a bit who encourage their children to move back when they have babies. What is that about? So we've lost a few grandparent babies, I'll say that. But most of the folks that we've invited, that you've invited to come and serve here, are continuing to serve here. We've also had over 20 experienced pastors come to serve in South Dakota. So we are, in fact, online to be able to meet the need of the congregations as people are retiring, but we are trying to plan for the future. So there are 3 goals inside the plan. First and foremost, to be more diligent and more specific about how we work with rostered leaders here in the South Dakota Synod. Over the past couple of years, we've started any number of educational pieces. We have begun our senior cohort, senior pastor leadership school. We have started that now with our first gathering. We're going to have a second cohort coming together just swiftly. Part of the need in this synod is that we have about 30 churches that need senior pastors. We have 10 churches out of that 30 that look like this one. Very big, complex systems. We do not have a senior pastor school in this church. And I thought for this synod, we really needed to be more intentional about working with people as they move through their years of experience to get them prepared for leadership in very big, complex churches like this one. So we have started that work. I would like to be able to not only expand that, but to fine-tune it as we move into the future. I also want to be able to continue to make this to be an inviting place. So we want to continue to expand our debt reduction for our first call seminarians. We have made great headway in the 6.5 years. When I first came into this office, we loaned out to first call people $4,000. This past year, we gave away $51,000. We need to get to about $100,000 to be able to work effectively with folks that are coming to serve in South Dakota. So that's part 1. The other part is going where God leads us. At the same time that we have counties that are shrinking, we also have places that are growing. And there is the need for moving mission and ministry into new locations. Within a half mile of my home in southeast Sioux Falls, there's about $40 million worth of construction right now. And if we didn't have a church there, and we do, we would need to be building one. But we had the foresight to put Gloria Dei into place many decades ago. We need to be able to continue to do that, of being able to look to the future, of seeing where growth is happening, and how do we buy farmland instead of buying development land, which was true with Gloria Dei. And it does make all the difference as congregations are being lifted up and started. And then the third part is working with our partners. Part of this mission plan will be dedicated to the ELCA, to their participation in their campaign. 10% will be going to them, along with a gift to Luther Seminary. So there will be more about that in just a few minutes. A couple of years ago, you heard me ask you to see if we couldn't get together and end hunger in South Dakota. As a part of that conversation, we called together a number of both state, federal institutions, agencies, and communities, congregations, denominations. We created what a LLC called Partners Against Hunger. This summer, we are going to be having 2 workshops, one in Rapid City on July 15th, the second on July 17th in Brookings. We will be looking at, principally in the morning, we will be looking at how congregations can partner with schools, with other entities in your community about doing summer feeding programs. We do a number of things really well in South Dakota. School lunches is one, the backpack program in little tiny villages and in Sioux Falls. We do a really fine job. But the one place that it really falls down, really across the whole state, is when summertime hits and schools are not in session. So it's too late to do anything about 2014, but I would hope and pray that you would come and at least listen how you could work with other entities in doing summer feeding programs across South Dakota. From my way of thinking, I think congregations are absolutely critical, because most of the time the issue is getting children to where the food is. And almost always our congregations are where they're supposed to be able to take care of the neighborhood. We'll also be looking at food pantries and food councils, and you're going to be hearing from people that are already doing that work. We're not bringing in outside experts, we're bringing in people that are going to be doing that, that are currently doing that in small, medium, and large communities. We're going to be talking a little bit about community gardens and also backpack programs. So again, there's a flyer in your bag about how you can sign up for that. And there's the code, or there's the URL to get you to the right place. On July 14th, we're going to be having the Bishop's annual golf tournament, which I don't get to play in because I can't play golf, but I go there every year. And mostly because I get to hang out with that little guy up there in the corner. This last year, we invited a team from our First Call pastors. We're going to do that again. Hope that you would come and be a part of that. We have an underwriting grant that comes to us, and so all of the money that you as a team put in goes to debt reduction. Every dime that you put in goes to debt reduction, and that really is how we got to that $51,000. This golf tournament raised over 20 grand this last year, and I really appreciate all of you that sent teams, and would look forward to playing with Cooper, if nothing else. He is way cuter than I am, so you know. Summer Stewardship Days are going to start in August. On Tuesday the 19th, we're going to be at Ascension in Brookings. On August 26th, we'll be in Scotland. On August 28th, we'll be in Rapid City at Wyaton Lutheran. On the 2nd of September, we're going to be at Bethlehem in Aberdeen. And on the 18th, we'll be at Westside at the new location. There will be a meal. At most of the places, I'll be cooking hamburgers. There is one location that may not happen. We're having a little debate at Wyaton who gets to feed people. So we may do a blended meal, or we may just turn it over to that community altogether. But there will be a meal. God's work our hands. You already heard that from Pastor Berger. September 7th, I will be at Holy Cross here in Sioux Falls. But if you would like to do an event, please get that lifted up, and we would love to be able to promote that across South Dakota. In September 21 through 23, the Reverend Dr. David Lose will be our guest at Fall Theological. He is gifted. If you've never heard David, it is well worth your time. He has been one of my favorite teachers in my last, 15 years, I suppose. As many of you know, he has taken a new position, but I talked to him at Festival of Homiletics. He is still coming. He is committed to being here, but he is the new president at Philadelphia Seminary, and we'll have already begun that work when he comes to spend some time with us. Later this fall, after September, we've been in a conversation. Is Jay Beach handy? Come out far enough where people can see you. We've been in a conversation with Jay Beach. He is one of our musicians for this church, the big church now, and along with some other synods in Region 3, we've put some money together and we're working at creating a center for contemporary music in the church. So our first event in South Dakota is this fall. You'll see the folks right there. The guy down in the lower left-hand corner, you might know him, Larry Olson, Ken Miedema, and I'm sorry I don't know the woman. Very good. So that will be a one-day event here at Augustana College, November 8th. So you can see where the URL is for registration. For next year, the Synod Council, at my urging, just so you know, I will take the hit if you're not happy, is going to be in Rapid City. We certainly know where the Bear Butte Conference is, don't we? We're one of a handful of synods that are whole states. There's Nebraska, there's Montana, even though they get a little part of Wyoming, but there's not many of us that are whole states. But as far as I know, we're the only synod that almost always has their synod assembly in the same place. Nebraska always moves it, so does Montana. We are a synod of this whole state. We are not just the Synod of Sioux Falls. And so it would be my hope and prayer that you would work just as hard as the West River folks have to be a part of the gathering next year in Rapid. We moved the date way back when because the Bear Butte folks always had graduation on that first weekend after Memorial Day, and that has changed. And we had enough complaints, and I didn't like it either, that we're going to go back to the old date, which is going to be the first weekend after Memorial Day. So next year we're going to start with the new old date, which is May 29-30 in Rapid City. So look forward to seeing you out there. This is part of my family. That's a 4th-generation picture. That's our youngest daughter, Sarah. That's obviously me, Cooper, and Isabel. And then that's my dad. He, on a good day, he remembers my name. On bad days, he doesn't. But that young pastor that you saw at the beginning, he doesn't have any memory of being a pastor. This is his 56th year of his ordination, and he has no idea that he ever served the church. But I give thanks for his work, for all the work of the pastors, the lay people out here, of making the church that we're a part of right now. So when I go to work every morning, these are the people that I think about. Those are my grandkids. Because I think about what church that I'm going to give to them. When they get to be an adult, what kind of church is going to be there? It's going to be the church that you and I build and hand off. I take this work very seriously. I want the very best for those kids because I know what this church has meant to me. I know what it has meant to my family as we have raised our children. I know what it has been to the communities that I've served in. Every day I pray about you and your work. But I think about those kids and think about what we're going to hand off to them. So that's the newest addition in the Zelmer clan. He was the one that was born on Tuesday. His name now, according to me, is David. Since I get to baptize him later on this summer, it's going to be David, just so you know. But there's the young man that I ordained this last Saturday. And as I was thinking about you and this day, I was thinking about him and about the invitation that a congregation, actually 2 congregations, made to him to come and serve, to learn how to be a pastor here in the South Dakota Synod in Brandon and at Split Rock. They know a lot about being church over there. I'm excited about having him come to serve and about the young people that are coming out of this seminary class and about this future of this church. I know I sometimes sound like I'm worried about those folks that are all retiring, and I do worry about that because we've had great leadership from them. But I'm telling you, I'm excited about the folks that we're inviting to come and work in this community of faith. So I wanted to end with his picture, not just because, well, he's cute, which of course he is, but he does need a haircut. Don't you think? But I wanted to end by just saying thanks. Thanks for the invitation to serve as your bishop. Thanks for the work that we do together and the future that we're stepping into. Amen. All right. We're in pretty good shape. At this time, I'm going to invite our panel to come forward and be seated. I'm going to invite David Lund to come forward. From the tall, good-looking guy there is Brett Koenneke. He's our parliamentarian. Again, Carla Borkart is our vice president. Susan Letty is our secretary of the Synod. And at this time, I am going to invite David to come forward to lead us into resolutions, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to Carla for resolution number 5. No, she's running the meeting. But you need to do your deal.
Thank you, Bishop Dave. I call on Pastor David Lund to bring resolution 5 to the floor.
Sorry. Jumped the gun there, apparently. Resolution 5 is to elect South Dakota Synod Council members, and the source is the Resolution Committee. Resolved that the South Dakota Synod of the ELCA elect the following conference nominees to the South Dakota Synod Council for a term of 4 years. From the Meridary Conference, lay female, Carrie Knutson of Toronto. From Crossroads Conference, a clergy, Reverend Jackie Braun from Salem. From the Southeastern Conference, a lay male, Robert Nelson of Vermilion. Of the Prairie Rivers Conference, a clergy, Reverend Jonathan Vihar from Scotland. And from the Bear Butte Conference, lay female, Jody Johnson of Buffalo. The recommendation is do pass.
So this resolution comes to us with a recommendation of do pass, which means that it has been motioned and seconded, so it is on the floor for debate. Are there any additional nominations for members of the Synod Council? I'll just say parenthetically that your Synod Council is composed of representatives from each of the 7 conferences, and there's 3 representatives from each conference, 1 lay female, 1 lay male, and a pastor. And so, and there's a rotation of how those folks or those positions are nominated so that we don't all change at the same time. And so these are the folks that are being nominated to take positions on the Synod Council. Are there any additional nominations from the floor? I have to say this 3 times. Are there any additional nominations from the floor? Seeing no movement to the microphones, we'll go ahead and vote. And I think this time we got to play with our voting machines before, but we're going to do a different type of vote, as Bishop Dave had said that we can do. So all in favor of casting the vote or approving the resolution as before you to nominate the people for the Synod Council, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Thank you. Motion approved.
That was a resolution.
A resolution. Yeah, so my first mistake.
You can join mine. All right. The reason we needed to do that today is those people will be installed at tomorrow's worship. So I know it was number 5, but we needed to get it done today so that we can install them at tomorrow's worship. I would invite David to come back. We will be taking up. I got to find where I'm supposed to be. I'm sorry. Resolution number 1. Yeah.
Resolution number 1, the subject is South Dakota Synod Appeal for Mission and Leadership. The source is the Synod Council. And we will bypass the whereases and to the resolves. You can read the whereases at your own leisure. Resolved that the South Dakota Synod Assembly strongly affirm moving forward with the appeal for leadership and mission, and be it further resolved that congregations of the South Dakota Synod support the appeal for leadership and mission through prayer, volunteer assistance, and through a special congregational campaign to be conducted sometime in 2015-2016, and be it finally resolved that the $2.5 million in cash raised during the 3-year appeal be allocated to the following manner: $350,000 for capital projects at Woyatan in Rapid City, $200,000 to fund the first 4 years of a permanent position on the Synod staff dedicated to the recruitment of rostered leaders, $100,000 startup funding for a new lifelong academy for rostered and lay leaders, $200,000 for the first 4 years of additional seminary debt reduction, $103,000 for new and renewing congregations, $217,000 as a tithe after campaign expenses, 2/3 to the ELCA's Always Being Made New campaign, and 1/3 to Luther Seminary, $330,000 for campaign expenses, and $1 million for the startup contribution toward a $4.8 million endowed fund that would support the new initiatives in perpetuity. The recommendation is do pass.
What? I don't think so. Microphone 1.
Carla Borkhardt, Synod Council. The vision of the South Dakota Synod is that all may be fed. And in discussions with members throughout the Synod, 2 key areas have been identified, and that is as tangible ways to live out our vision. As we have heard Pastor Berger mention this morning, there is a need to invest in ongoing leadership development for both our rostered and our lay leaders. And a feasibility study has been conducted among the members of the South Dakota Synod to say, is it feasible to conduct a capital campaign at this time and in this place for our Synod? And in speaking with the consultants that did this feasibility study, they said, yes, this is a good time for us to do a capital campaign looking at how may we live out our vision that all may be fed. So looking at that need for leadership development and also for growing and redeveloping missions throughout the Synod, as both Pastor Berger and Bishop Dave had talked about in their remarks. The Synod Council took all of that together, in addition with the comments from the consultant, and urge your strong support of this capital campaign. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
My name is Nathanael Lizarazo. I'm a pastor at First Lutheran, and also I happen to be the chair of the Multicultural Committee of the South Dakota Synod. As we all know, the present of the church and the future of the church will be much more colorful and much more diverse. I greatly celebrate the fact that Woyatan in Rapid City will have an amazing contribution to our exciting things that could happen in that part of the state. But my question will be, because precisely that's also the mission of the Multicultural Committee of the Synod, to advocate for people of color, for different ministries. So while I rejoice that Boyatán is there, my question will be, is there any provision within this campaign for other ministries that are growing in our South Dakota Synod? As a way of example, we have an African ministry at First Lutheran Church. We have a Pueblo de Dios at Agustana Lutheran Church. So that's my question.
Pastor Bill Tesh. I serve as Director for Evangelical Mission here in South Dakota and as Associate to Bishop Zelmer. And in the original proposal, before the feasibility study was conducted, we proposed that a portion of the dollars that would be dedicated to development of new congregations and renewal of congregations would be specifically targeted towards ethnic-specific communities like Pueblo de Dios and First Lutheran African Ministry. So right now, the feasibility study indicated that we can raise about $2.5 million on the front end with the hope and the good expectation of being able to raise the rest in planned or estate-type gifts over a period of years thereafter. And so the short answer to your question is yes, in those dollars that are dedicated to new and renewing congregations, a good portion of those would of course, go towards communities that are doing multicultural ministry or cross-cultural ministry or targeting an ethnic-specific congregation. So,
I will wholeheartedly trust that that's going to be the case, so thank you for answering my question. I consider extremely important that our synod continues to uplift at all levels of the leadership, these ministries that are emerging and that are an amazing blessing and bring amazing gifts to our life together.
Microphone 1.
Thank you, Bishop Zelmer. I'm Jonathan Vihar, pastor at Zion Lutheran in Scotland, South Dakota. I raise to speak in favor of the proposed capital campaign. I would like to live up one aspect that I think is very important. I remember attending my first Synod Assembly as a sophomore in high school. I think my pastor tricked me into going. She knew I loved Robert's Rules and said, if you love Robert's Rules, you'll love Synod Assembly, which is true. But I think she tricked me into going because she wanted me to see the church in a bigger way. And I remember at that assembly, the most vivid thing that came out was when the bishop stood up at the microphone and made a challenge to all the congregations, saying that if you have not produced a pastor from your church in the last 10 to 20 years, you are on the pastor welfare program.
Yeah.
You are expecting every other church in the synod to produce pastors for you. And at that assembly, they passed the Invitation to Serve initiative, which I believe was a church-wide program at that time. That intentional discernment process that our synod began was instrumental in getting me to explore my call as a professional clergy person in this church. And I'm gifted or blessed to be from a church that has produced many pastors. As I was in Bible study this last week, I asked my own congregation how many pastors had come out of that church, and they started rambling off name after name, and then one person said, yes, but they're all retired now. This is why this initiative is so important, that we need to be intentional, not just as individual congregations, but as a whole synod, as a whole church, and raising leaders for the future, both clergy and lay leaders. So thank you, and I support this initiative.
Microphone 1.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Pastor Will Olson from Piedmont and Rapid City. I have a question. The resolve contains hard and fast numbers, $2.5 million, and that's broken down into other hard and fast numbers. My question is, what happens if there's a shortage? What happens if there's an overage? Who takes the bite?
Right now it would be Piedmont Lutheran. Will and I have known each other for a long time. Huh? There will be, the answer will be complex. We'll have to figure it out as we move along. Some of these pieces we're already doing. I mean, the senior pastor school, that we're not waiting till we get funding to do that. We're making it work the way it's working right now. We'll be able to add things to it once funding comes on board. Same thing with like answer the call for debt reduction. If the money's not there, the money's not there. I mean, you can't give away money that you don't have. For me at least, one of the central front end pieces would be out at Woyatan. We need to get a retreat center built. It is a ministry that is just, I think, incredibly important both for Rapid City, for that community in North Rapid, and for the whole church. I mean, I regularly get phone calls from people about the ministry that we have at Pine Ridge. And we have that ministry because we have a retreat center where folks from across the church can come and work and be a part of a community in a very different place. I would like that same kind of experience at Woyatan in North Rapid. We need to have some additional funding sources, and that retreat center can be that. We also have some just physical plant needs at the church. There are some things they need to do. So the only capital part of this mission plan is really for Woyatan. So for me, those would be kind of front end dollars so that we can begin that work, get the repairs done that need to be done, but to get that retreat center in place and up and running. I mean, we already get requests for being able to do that right now. We've had some great leadership in Pastor David and those that have gone before him and from the community there in North Rapid. Truthfully, I want to be able to support that. So the rest will come as it comes. The $1 million for the endowment, if it's not there, you're not starting the endowment. Okay? Microphone 2.
My name's Tim Krieger. I'm from here at Our Savior's Crossroad Conference. In here it talks about $103,000 for new and renewing congregations. I think new is kind of self-explanatory. What are we going to qualify as a renewing congregation, and will there be any specific criteria that they have to follow to receive funds?
I'm going to call on Pastor Bill Tesh to answer the question.
Thanks for that. And in a little while, you're going to hear about a new opportunity in South Dakota called GIFT, Growing in Faith Together. But that's our new rollout of our new renewal training for congregations and congregation teams in South Dakota. But yes, there are some specific criteria for congregations that wish to receive partnership dollars from the ELCA and from the Synod and wish to move forward in an intentional process of renewing their life together. And that involves making a commitment to free up a certain percentage of the pastor's time so that, or rostered leader's time, so that he or she can be engaged in building relationships in the community and leading the congregation out into the community in those relationships. And then it's also about certain commitments around stewardship and their life together. And so, yeah, the answer is yes. There is a specific set of commitments. We receive about $145,000 a year from our churchwide organization and supplement that with an additional $40,000 from our mission partner funds for congregations that are in some kind of a renewal process. We have about 18 in various stages of renewal and in different kinds of intensities of processes throughout the state. I'm the member of a congregation that 15 years ago was about to close. And today, Augustana Lutheran in downtown Sioux Falls and central Sioux Falls is a really vital engine for God's mission and a testament to how important that kind of investment is.
Are you ready to vote? Do you know what you're voting on? This means yes. Does anyone not know what you're voting on? Raise your hand. Okay. We are going to use the voting machines. Why not? So if you are in favor of resolution number 2, approving the mission appeal for the South Dakota Synod, you would push 1 or A. If you would not like this to happen, push 2 or B. Please vote now. Are you not voting? Are you not a rich? You're just parliamentarian. Please close the vote and display the results. It does pass. Congratulations. You just made a lot more work for me. Just when we got the report out, at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end, Dave Brunkow was saying, this is only going to work if Bishop Zellmer is part and parcel of almost every... Oh, great, David. Thank you. So there will be a lot of meetings in Lyman County, north of Presho, one of my favorite meeting spots. Kind of up there. No. All right. I'm going to call on our treasurer, Eric Gilbertson. And just to report out, Eric serves as the treasurer of this synod. It is the only position, only elected position of this synod that can be reappointed. The bishop cannot, the secretary cannot, nor can the vice president. And at our March meeting, the South Dakota Synod, we did report this out, made the determination that we would reappoint Eric to another 4-year term. So I give thanks for your work. I've known him for a long time and much appreciate, and it only took 3.5 years to train you. So.
Thank you. And what the bishop left out about that reappointment process, when we held the vote, the entire council, there was one nay vote, and that was me. It carried through, though. No, I was more than happy. I think it shows a level of trust, and I'm happy to continue to serve. As indicated, this is my 4th time I've had the opportunity to stand up here and give a report. However, my understanding is this would be the first time that any of this would be streamed online. So, yeah, I'm sure that the viewership just jumped immensely knowing that the treasurer's report is going on right now. Thank you. Thank you. Big thanks to Kevin and the tech guys for getting this set up here. And of course, they're going to continue to make me look great on the internet too, right?
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, for a lot of folks, we're going to go through some numbers, but I think in giving you the best context, it's best to get a real quick shot of 3 years. The year that we just completed, the year that we're in, and the year that we're going to be voting on going into next year. So that three brief shots, I think that will give you the best information and background to be an informed voting member. Side commentary, if there are any of you who serve on councils, if you serve in the officer capacity, or just one of us number nerds, love finance, love numbers, here's a fantastic resource that you can go back to your congregations with. Has a wide range of information, all the way from the extremes of putting a seasoned accountant to sleep, it gets that intense, all the way to having some very basic examples of good documents and procedures that you can use within your congregation. So just something that I'd like to offer up. So starting with the first of those 3 years, 2013, the year that we just closed out. Every year that we close out, we have an independent auditor come in and audit the books of the Synod. I think the most important thing to offer up, first we got what's considered a clean, unqualified audit opinion. That would be 4 for 4 now. Yours being treasurer, that we have clean, qualified audit opinion. Well, you guys, thank you. You're going to make me blush up here. But actually, the real applause, Lois, stand up, please. Lois and the rest of the Synod staff. We have internal control procedures that not only Lois but the rest of the staff follow to help protect the integrity of our finances, and Lois also does a lot of the heavy lifting with the audit work that the independent auditor does. So without those, I mean, those folks are a great contributor to the reason why we get a clean bill of health from our auditor every year. So I want to offer that up. This slide, better detail on the next one. This is just more detailed information, and there's some, I'll just save the accounting from the previous one. This is the better snapshot. Think of this. So from the year 2013, the one that we just closed out, the one that was just audited, clean bill of health from the auditor, if you were to visualize every dollar that the Synod spends, this is how that dollar gets broken out. Approximately 70 cents of every dollar in 2013 went directly out to ministries of all those different locales. Less than a quarter for these lovely, fantastic people from the Synod office, less than a quarter goes to pay for their wages and benefits. Less than a nickel goes directly to what I would consider the overhead expenses of the Synod office. And then you have approximately a penny that goes towards all those folks that represent you. Well, no one on the council gets compensation, but those are costs that go into travel, meetings, just general government. So that is the verbal breakout. If you're a little more visual, that's how it would break out on a lovely 3D pie chart. Those different categories. You can ingrain that in your mind. If you're bored already, go ahead, take a picture of that with your phone and start a Twitter feed. Finances are fun, something, and go out and share it. One real thing of significance to note from 2013, we had an incredible increase in our endowment funds. 2 significant major gifts that came into the endowment. Those gifts combined total over $2 million, the earnings of which go towards several items, the big chunk being seminary debt. And then, of course, within that, there are also earnings that we get on our endowment. But that is a very significant number for us. With that number, we have now breached the $5 million mark of endowed funds, which is fantastic and just a blessing. What this screen shows, there's 3 major buckets of resources that the Synod has. Those 3 classifications are the major buckets. They're really broken out by what we have control to do with the money. Unrestricted, the council has the ability to do with that really as the council decides. Temporary, that is money that has a donor-imposed restriction on it, so the Synod has to use it in some certain way that's been dictated to us. And then permanently restricted refers to those endowed funds. We get to use the earnings from those for the purposes that the donors gave attached to them. And really what this slide is meant to show, which has not been the case for probably at least the first 3 years I was treasurer, every single category of that, the first 2, the smaller 2, increase slightly, much better than decreasing. And then the permanently restricted item, as you can see, increased very significantly because of those major gifts that we received in 2013. So what this is meant to show is that we really improved our financial position slightly in 2 categories and then significantly so in the endowed funds area. So a good year in 2013. And then I thought, just because we're covering 3 different time periods, if there are any particular questions pertaining to those time periods, I would offer them up rather than just throw them all to the end. So the one other thing to note, 2013, if you have trouble sleeping and want to read the audit report, it's been made available. It's accessible through the iPad. It's accessible through the website. You can look at that copy of the report. But at this point in time, if there are any specific questions related to 2013, we'd be happy to entertain those. Seeing no movement, we'll march on to 2014. Now, 2014, the current year that we live in, what happens is the budget for this year was initially set last year by the Assembly, and then after we get those statements of intent from congregations, the Synod revises the budget based on what we actually think we're going to get. For the most part, we do, yeah, we'll beat the drum a little bit. We did a fantastic job of estimating last year. If you were at the assembly, take credit. You passed a very good estimated budget. There is the one key revision that I would offer up, and if you want a reference document, this is part, if you look at the 2015 mission plan handout, it is a white sheet about 2 pages long with 3 different columns. This, you can look at the adopted versus revised of 2014. You will notice in going from, there's a specific line item in there for the Flandreau Indian School chaplaincy program that went from having funding to no funding. And the very brief answer there is that the Synod received some complaints related to the ministry. The council heard the complaints, did an investigation, and based on that and not having any leadership capacity or governance capacity, the council decided to completely cut the funding for it. So that is the reason why when the budget was passed, it went from having funding to having none whatsoever. But other than that, there weren't any major changes to the 2014 mission plan. So, and what this is up here, this is an even more condensed version of that mission plan document that I referenced that you'd have in your handouts. And really what the takeaway from this, what I would pass along to you here, 2014, what was adopted at the Assembly last year, 2014, what was revised by Council after we learned about what we'd likely be getting from congregations. Think about that allocation of money to the different missionaries. Think of that pie chart earlier. It's almost, well, look, if you look at the percentages, it's the exact same. If there were another pie chart produced for adopted versus revised, it would look the exact same. We're basically allocating money into the exact same areas. So that would be the big takeaway. Also that we're still budgeting a balanced budget. You're going to spend no more than what we project to take in. So then at this time, if there were any questions related to the 2014 revisions, I think it'd be an appropriate time, as there really isn't anything else because you did such a good job estimating last year. Everything looked like it was going to shake out fairly close. So, see a few mover and shakers for coffee probably, but other than that, it doesn't look like any questions. So, we will march on to 2015. And this is the one where, if anything, there's probably going to be some questions or possible discussion, and there will be takeaways, which I think you as your church representatives, congregational representatives, there's going to be some information that you are going to want to take back to your congregational leaders, or if you're on the council, that you'll want to apprise the council of in the 2015 proposed mission plan. Once again, thinking about the way that dollars were spent earlier, the breakout of the dollars, start with it's going to be the same, maintaining mission support levels to South Dakota Sustained Ministry and supported ministry partners at those same allocations in prior years, except. Second bullet point. The proposal that's in front of you is going to increase funding to the campus ministry line item, and it's also proposing to increase funding to Native American ministry. And I'll take just a brief moment explanations on that. There's a very brief one at the bottom of your proposed budget already, but the funds that have been going to the Black Hills State portion of campus ministry for several years now has been coming out of a special reserve fund, so it has not been coming out of the regular budget. The reality is that reserved fund, its trend is it's going to go away. The funds aren't going to be there. Therefore, where do you get the funds for Black Hills Campus Ministry? The answer is putting it as part of the regular operating budget, or at least that's what's in the proposal right now. The second piece of this would be adding a full-time position to the ministry that's currently ongoing at the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And there is a handout. It's about a page long. It further defines the goals, the types of ministry that will be going into this youth and children position if passed. And I would encourage you to look at that. I did not draft it, therefore I do not recall a lot of the specifics off the top of my head. I have to give credit to Pastor Bill for doing that. But I would encourage you before we vote to look at that. And those two items combined, keep those in mind. The reason I wanted you to keep them in mind, revised 2014, the year that we're in right now, where we think that we're going to land still doing a balanced budget. Going into the proposal that you will be discussing, voting on, debating, as you can see, we're going from a balanced budget to a deficit budget. The sole driver, two drivers of that deficit budget are those two additional items, adding those two to the operating budget. What that does to the allocations, it moves them slightly, so we'd be spending about 71 cents on every dollar going to mission ministry. Staff wages would be about 23 cents on every dollar. Office overhead would be about 4 cents of every dollar, and then council and committees would be about 2 cents on every dollar. So, important takeaways. Even before I touch on this, one important thing to note. Actually, I'll just go into the editorial even before I go into that. When we were discussing putting forth this budget, I think it's safe to say that I was probably maybe one of the more skeptical people at the table.
I would say that, yes.
Yep. So the nature of the numbers guy, right? You got to be skeptical with numbers. Anytime you see a deficit staring you in the face, especially one of that size, it caused me some concern. But one of the things that we did not build into the budget, which we know is a distinct possibility, that we would be having some funding partnership with the Episcopalian Church. They strongly support that type of ministry, and the thought is that they would potentially help fund up to 50% of that position. But it was not secure. We don't have any money in hand. We don't have any signed paperwork, so it was not built into the budget. The other thing, which led to a little bit of, I'd say, my guarded skepticism, if we are going to pay through this through the operating budget, it means that mission support will have to go up over time. Otherwise, we keep running deficit budgets. So, in the Great Lutheran style, what does this mean? What is the message if we're going to pass this budget? What is the takeaway that needs to be communicated back to congregations, those in leadership? Over the long term, giving you an estimate, mission support will have to go up 10% for us to be able to pay all of our mission partners without them basically at budgeted levels. So that's the long term. My opinion, and based on those 3.5 years of training that you said took for me to learn the job, that is going to take a period of several years. It's not going to happen in 1 year. Going back and asking your congregation to increase your giving 10%, it's just not going to happen. I'd love for it to happen. I would absolutely love for it to happen. But I don't think it's practical. So the near-term solution to that, in order to make this work, there will have to be directed gifts to the Synod for those specific ministries for a period of time. That's the way that it works. That's the way that everything would stay balanced out. Which even, of course, I have to be the downer numbers guy at times. I thought, okay, but we don't know if any of that will happen yet, so we still need to proceed with caution. But one of the things that came out of that conversation, or at least the understanding in putting this budget forward, is that if we are not able to get enough of those designated gifts, especially for the ministry position at Pine Ridge for children and youth, that we just won't do it. We can't do it. We won't hire someone on, so that would alleviate about 44,000 of that deficit immediately if we didn't have the funds, and it didn't happen. So that you cut your risk down a little bit in having an understanding that way, and I want that to be the clear communicated message as well. I think that's probably the crux of the important editorial stuff for me to come for the 2015 mission plan. We won't be voting on it today. That will come tomorrow. Debate and voting will come tomorrow on the mission plan. But at this point in time, I think it's probably important, if there are any questions offhand, that we could, if not address them, work on them overnight to communicate that information back by tomorrow. So if there were any, we would most certainly entertain the questions at this time for the 2015 mission plan. I will be around through the entirety of the festivities today to help field questions, and if any come up after the fact, I will be more than happy to communicate them back through the microphone tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
All righty, thank you.
Appreciate it, Eric. All right, you're all big boys and big girls. In other words, you're grown up. The orders of the day are coffee. But we need about 10 minutes to introduce open space to you, because that's what we're going to do when we come back from the break. If I give you, can you get it done in 5 minutes? No. If you give me 10 minutes, I'll still give you 10 more minutes on the coffee break. How'd that be? Are you willing to wait? No one will hurt me later on? In that case, I would invite, I know I'm taking your stuff, Carla. If Pastor Jonathan Vihar and Pastor Bill Tesh would please come forward and introduce us to open space.
I'd like you to take just a moment to think about being bound, about being tied up, about being captive, restricted, and leashed. We actually have many words in our language to describe the same kind of feeling of not being free to do what we are called to do, not being free to be led in new directions. We are bound by fear, by our own sense of limitations, by what we have been taught is and is not possible, by a lack of imagination for the possibilities that are open to us as children called together through our baptism. I think the planning committee for this assembly may have taken the theme too seriously, unbound to live, and so after much conversation this afternoon, we will try to live that out in an intensive unbinding. Unbinding of the rules of procedure, which, by the way, I love. Unbinding from red and green microphones, from patient listening as people get up to speak about their passions. We'll be unbound to a time of what is going to seem like chaos. Something that is less predictable, less organized, less bound. And to prepare you for this time, I want to give you a brief explanation of what the open space process that we will use will be like. First, you need to know that there is one law. We are still people of law, right, in gospel. So there is one law that you must know, the law of 2 feet. And you have a brief explanation of the open space process that we'll use on the green sheets and in your app. This one law is that In this process, you set the agenda. If you're passionate about where the church is being unbound and freed for God's mission today, I invite you to fill out the topic submission form either in the guidebook app or on the forms located on the tables in the back. We'll hand those out shortly. The variety and number of topics is only limited by your own imagination. Now, if you don't feel led to facilitate the group, then listen attentively and find a topic that you can be passionate about. And those forms need to be submitted prior to our second plenary. The law of 2 feet continues as the topics are briefly presented, and the assembly is sent to engage in God's mission in the world. At that time, your feet will guide you to the topic that you are most passionate about or most want to be a part of. You may keep your feet as long as it feels like you're in the right place. If any time you feel like you're being led in new directions or no longer learning or contributing what is being talked about in that moment, use your feet and move to a different topic that might be of more interest. That's the only rule. You decide what to talk about, and if you stay and if you go. What I personally love about the open space process is the simple idea that underlines it all, that where a few people are gathered who are really passionate about an issue or a topic, mountains can be moved. If you have a room full to the brim of people that don't care, then nothing's ever going to happen. So go to where you feel most called and what you care about. The 5 guiding principles speak to this fact. Whoever comes are the right people. Whenever it starts is the right time. Whatever happens is the only thing that could have. And whenever it ends is when it ends. So in closing, and Pastor Tesh will give you a few more details, I invite you into this process and to the somewhat organized chaos that is going to come. That is sometimes how the Spirit works among us. Come with an open mind and be ready to be unbound to live into God's future for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Vihar. I want to direct my comments toward those of you who feel passionate about an issue and feel prepared to at least begin a conversation about that. So imagine a room, maybe it's a Sunday school room downstairs. There's an issue that you feel passionate about, and you are willing to initiate the conversation around that issue. So these would be people who are ready to declare a topic, to say, I want to talk about faith practices, or I want to talk about the National Youth Gathering. One of those places where you see the church being unbound for the future, where the gospel is leading us into new ways in the 21st century. So I'm addressing my comments now to those of you who are saying, yeah, there's something I want to talk about. And if no one else will lead it, I'm at least willing to start the conversation. So on your apps, on your phones or your tablets, is a form called Open Space Topic Submission Form. And you can fill that out and send that to us. You need to do it now or early during the next break, because we'll be compiling those topics during the next break. We also have a limited number of maybe a couple of hundred of the open space topic submission forms that are available. And I'm going to invite the election committee to come forward now and grab these so that they can distribute those. And so raise your hand if you think, yeah, there's something I want to talk about, I'm passionate about, I want to gather with some folks and visit about a topic. And keep your hands up there until, and by the way, you need a form because you can't submit it via the app. So I'm going to invite the folks on the election committee to pass those out to people with their hands that are raised. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be someone that feels like you bring a wealth of knowledge to that topic. It's just something that you feel passionate about, that you want to make sure that there's an opportunity to explore it during this open space time. That conversation may last for 15 minutes or it may last for 2 hours. It will all depend upon the law of 2 feet. Please take the time to fill those out as soon as you can during this break. There is a receptacle, a box right outside the gathering area. You can leave them there on the way out, and Pastor Vihar and I will look those over, and then when we come back for the next plenary, we'll let you know where the discussions are taking place. An important piece on that topic submission form is how we can contact you during the assembly. We want to be able to get in touch with you to let you know what room that the topic about which you're passionate, where that discussion will be taking place. So please be sure and indicate how we can get in touch with you. Hopefully you have some kind of a mobile device like this that we can, but if not, just tell us that you'll be standing next to the men's bathroom at such and such a time, and we'll meet you there. Or the women's bathroom, that's okay too. All right. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Microphone 3.
We have a vacancy.
Who are you, young lady?
Kayla Katersky. I am from the South Dakota Synod. I'm also standing on my tippy toes, so that's...
I'm not hearing you at all, so...
Kayla Katersky.
Ah.
Thank you. I'm short. Kayla Katersky. I'm a member of Synod Council, one member of Synod Council.
Yes.
We have a vacancy for a youth representative, and that name was overlooked. So, be it resolved that the South Dakota Synod of the ELCA elect Brody Danielson as youth representative to the South Dakota Synod Council for a time of 2 years.
Okay. What's happened, folks, is we left the name off the ballot, and Kayla is rectifying that problem by making a resolution to nominate Brody, who was supposed to be on the ballot. So I would need a second for us to move. Is there debate? So what you're going to be voting on is you're actually going to be electing Brody to the Synod Council for a 2-year term as the youth delegate. He was supposed to be on the ballot. That was, he didn't do anything wrong. Well, he probably did at some point in his life, but not today. Brody, are you around? Stand and wave. Right there. Excellent. Is the Synod Assembly prepared to vote? Let's do a rousing yay or nay. How about that? All those in favor of Brody, say aye. Aye. Try saying nay now, huh? Yeah, that is carried. Looking forward to working with you, Brody. We gave a lot of blood. We're going to get you to... You've given 8.4 quarts. No, 8.4 gallons? Yikes. If anybody's feeling faint right now, just sit down. Congratulations. I want to say thank you to the Southeastern Conference. They provided the food for this break. Let's give them a round of applause. You're going to have time right now during the break to go downstairs or upstairs, talk to the folks that are here, go and take a look at the displays. Please submit your open space topics. I don't believe we need a resolutions committee meeting. Do I hear different? No. And we're just going to move right to the break. When you hear Tangle Blue playing, you need to come back. We're going to lift up the topics, show you where those conversations are going to take place. So you need to come back here before you go to the open space. All right? We'll see you at 3 o'clock. Thank you.